we're really like lucky and privileged to live where we do. Basically, it was just like my first encounter with like, we got to the hotel and like there's like a bomb squad like checking the car to make sure that there's no like explosives in the car.
Welcome to Atypical Daydream, a podcast about life on the road. I'm Josh, your host, and thanks for stopping by. My first guest today is Daryl Sabara. He's both an actor and a great dad. You'll know him from his movies Spy Kids, The Green Inferno, and many more. Daryl's stories are a window into a young actor's life on the road and the beauty of real human connection.
First story I want to tell you takes place in the Amazon in Peru. It was for a movie I did called The Green Inferno, directed by Eli Roth. It's a play on Cannibal Holocaust, if you know that movie, about these documentarian filmmakers who go and they stumble across a like indigenous tribe, and then they get welcomed into the tribe. And we're doing that movie 2012. We did half of it in Santiago, Chile, and then half in the Amazon in Peru. And this one scene we were shooting is there's like 5 or 6 of us, the social justice warriors. We're going in the scene, we like ambush this crew, and we're supposed to chain ourselves to these like bulldozers. So in the scene, like it's the most elaborate scene in the movie, I think, where there are explosions, and we prep for like 3 hours, all the explosions, and like rehearse like where we're going, where we're going to chain ourselves, what the cameras are going to be. There's like 3 different cameras, and it's a long ass scene. It's like a 10-minute scene of like following us up until chaining ourselves and the explosions and then the aftermath. And it's go time, and we do it, and like it feels real. It's like because we're doing it for real. The explosions go off, the cameras going everywhere, we're all yelling, like everyone's in it. Eli, the director, yells cut, and like everyone's clapping, and they're like, whoa, we did it, we did it, we did it. And the DP, this sweet guy named Antonio, English wasn't his first language. And Eli's like, did you fucking get it? It was beautiful. Oh my God, it was fucking beautiful. And the DP, Antonio, comes out and he's like, yes, beautiful, beautiful. One problem, no press record. And so it was a great rehearsal that didn't get recorded. And we spent the whole rest of the day doing it one more time. When we filmed like the village scenes with the villagers, where all the people in the village, they didn't know what a movie was. Like they had no idea what a movie was because there was like no technology on the village. So the scout person like went to the village, explained to them what a movie was, and then they were all like the villager actors like in the movie. Some of the most giving actors I've ever worked with, because when you don't know what a movie is, they just go for it. So if someone tells them to pretend to do something, they just pretend with their full hearts. The travel day to get to this village was like an hour car ride to the boat, an hour boat ride to the village. But every day we had to pay off this guy with a gun just to like cross this rope back and forth every day, twice a day. And on the way back every day, we'd be like, remember us from yesterday and from this morning? He'd be like, and you do what you got to do. It was a good business the guy had going. Just a rope. I can jump to a nice little road story I had in Indonesia. I was 19. That was the first time I've ever been to like an Eastern country, Eastern culture. We started in Jakarta, and then we like traveled all around. That movie is called After the Dark. And that movie's kind of like Dead Poets Society meets Inception. It's like about a classroom. It's like about a classroom of kids who go on these like thought experiments in their philosophy class with their teacher. And so there's like 20 kids in the movie. And a lot of the kids in the movie, like it was their first movie, and then they've gone on to do like really awesome projects. I was also gone for about like 8 weeks. And that movie was intense because it's a long travel. It's a long way away from home. we were, how do I say this? I didn't feel very safe. Like, luckily there were 20 other kids there, so like we all had each other, but we're really like lucky and privileged to live where we do. Basically, it was just like my first encounter with like, we got to the hotel and like there's like a bomb squad like checking the car to make sure that there's no like explosives in the car. And but I will say about my time in Indonesia, like one weird thing that I experienced was like 8 weeks there, like everyone being so kind and welcoming. And then as soon as I landed back home in Los Angeles, I think I went to like a Starbucks, and it was like in a little strip mall with like a Starbucks and a Quiznos and a Jamba Juice. And I remember looking around, and I think this is like the first panic attack I ever had. But like I looked around, and everyone there was just like shoving their faces full of food, and they just looked miserable, and like people were just like sweating and miserable, and I like freaked out. I was like, wait, this is, stop! Just stop! Stop eating! Maybe it's because I didn't really eat out there in Indonesia, because like I basically just ate at the hotel, and then every time we went off to shoot, like the whole day I kind of just fasted because I found out that the production were just getting street food. And I was like, okay, not gonna eat that. And I tried to tell the other castmates, I was like, hey guys, I think it's just street food. And they're just telling us that it's not. And they're like, no, it's fine. And then everybody got sick. I love sharing these stories because I always like, when I say, also saying things out loud, like bring up memories. And so saying these stories out loud really reminds me, like really what I found in those other places that I got to visit. What they don't have is the rapid technology that we have. And I notice just talking about it, how kind of special that is, because like right now, you and I, like we needed some groceries. We would go on our phone and get groceries, and it could be here in an hour. And it's like I don't have to leave the house. Like I don't have to go out, and it's so convenient. But like there's so much connection lost where we are now with technology, that like just thinking back to these stories like 10 years ago, it's like, wow, like the connection that other people have in other places is so strong and beautiful.
Hey, Josh here. I love making this podcast, and I'd love to make it my full-time gig. Besides telling the stories, I'm basically a one-man band, and that takes time. If you're enjoying the podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You'll have access to loads of great bonus stories, and you'll have the satisfaction of knowing that you're supporting a truly independent podcast. Find the Patreon link in the show notes. And thanks. This next story comes from Chris Jordan. He's an OG green coffee buyer and a coffee company executive. Chris's story, like any trailblazing journey, takes us to remote parts of the world, while revealing what is both lost and gained when Westerners start making a more regular appearance.
I've been in coffee for 23 years, and I've been in kind of every aspect of the business, from starting as a barista to being a cupper, and then doing some trading as well. And then I went on the NGO side and spent 6 years in East Africa, living and working and trying to do my best to support smallholder producers, giving them access to markets and so on. So life is a series of stories. And so I was with Starbucks for 16 years, super fortunate. From 80 stores, when I left, there was almost 20,000. When I moved to Switzerland, what was really interesting is I actually, at that point, became in charge of quality for the business, and sort of had a task. Well, I had a task to go out and diversify where we bought coffee from. And so it was sort of given like blank check to go find new origins. And part of it was because we saw climate change coming and things like that were happening. Went to Africa. I was in southern Tanzania in a place called Mbinga. I was going to visit one of the ministers of agriculture in Mbinga, and I went to his office. And these are pretty like rural places, right? And you have like wood paneling everywhere, and kind of at one day you can see they're built kind of grand and a little bit formal, but pretty dusty. And the secretary said, wait here. The minister is late. No problem. And I waited like an hour, like what seemed like a long time in a dusty office. And then finally the minister came in, and he had all these cotton balls in his ear, and there was blood like pulsing out of his ear. And I was like, whoa. And he just kind of pretended like it was not a big deal. And he sat down and like took the meeting and blood kept coming out of the side of his head. That was wild. Anyways, during that meeting, a guy popped in, and I still remember his name, Noel Yatera. And he was like, sorry to interrupt. And he just kind of dropped some samples and some stuff on the desk and left. And I continued to travel around and do the kind of, I think I did Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania all at the same time. And I took the samples back, and I kind of forgot even where they were from. And I tasted them, and I was like, wow, these are pretty good Kenyans. And in the world of coffee, like Tanzania has never really had the punch and the depth and the flavor complexity of a Kenyan. And then I couldn't really remember where they came from. And all I had, he didn't leave any info except he left some Polaroids. And it was Polaroids of like a wet mill or like coffee trees or like him like standing next to a coffee tree. And so I ended up finally tracking him down, and it ended up being he was working for TechnoServe, which was the groups that ran the coffee initiative, which ended up being a very influential program in East Africa. The places that I end up going, I mean, sometimes people will tell me like, Safari must have been great. It's like, yeah, that's not really where I hung out. I hung out in like deep Shakiso or in Agaro in Ethiopia. So these places were very remote. But I think one of the things that I was thinking about, or I often think about, is how things have evolved and changed. Back in the day when I would go to Ethiopia, there was no ATM. So you brought cash. Sometimes you'd go to Ethiopia, you want to make the most of it. 3 weeks, it'd be $5,000 in cash. And you pay cash for the hotel, you pay cash for the Lada taxis, like, these little Russian taxis, blue taxis, where sometimes like you can see the pavement below. And so you would go with cash, no ATMs, limited hotels. And I remember I would always go to the south, because at that time in Ethiopia, Sidamo and Yirgacheffe were, then they still are, really important. But you'd go down there, and it was about a 6-hour drive, which wasn't too bad considering, Mbinga from Dar es Salaam was 16 hours on a bus. But you'd go down there, and there was limited hotels. And so we would always stay at this place called the Get Smart. And it was awful. Like, I slept fully clothed. I learned to bring like my own sleeping bag. You definitely didn't sleep much that night. The bathroom was a hole in the ground in the cement. And I always loved going to Ethiopia, but it was also kind of like, you had to kind of psych yourself up. And eventually we're like, to hell with this. Let's just camp. It's just so much better to camp. But then, now if I look back at Addis, like there's ATMs on every corner. There's like the nicest hotel in the world in the Sheraton, and you can fly to Jimma. You could never even fly to Jimma before. And there's like Aragash Lodge in Sidamo, which is like this really cool boutique, like one of the best boutique hotels in the world that's done really, really, really well. And I think I'm probably to some degree like coffee tourism's fueled all that. I mean, back when I was a buyer, and not to sound, we all do this, and coffee people do it the most. It's like, I remember when, but people weren't traveling, coffee people, it was like Nestle and Starbucks were traveling to origin. People weren't traveling. And then Stumptown started traveling, and Aleko Shagunas and Jeff Watts started traveling. And now everybody travels. And it's to be honest, it's a mixed bag. I'm always really pretty open about and positive about the way that the world's progressed in coffee. And I think that access that third wave has given to coffee, and like almost coffee tourism. Like, I'm sure Aragash Lodge, the first time I ever went to Aragash Lodge, we were going to the Get Smart, and I saw a little sign that said, it literally was a little sign that said beer, and it pointed that way. And I was like, can we just go see what that sign is? And it ended up being this beautiful lodge. And then pretty soon you would show up at Aragash Lodge, and it was like a coffee reunion of people. It's like, so it probably really fueled a lot of the development in some of these coffee origins. And, at some point, like, you could just do a book on the hotels too. There's Coffee Land, which is in Jimma. I think Carl Servone, who worked for the Gates program with TechnoServe, I think he got Giardia swimming in the pool there. Like, they had a swimming pool, but like no one swam in it. And Carl's like, I woke up and went at breakfast. I was like, how are you doing? He's like, yeah, I went swimming. I mean, you went swimming in that pool? Like, who does that? And he's like, and then the next day he's like, yeah, I have Giardia. It's like, oh shit. It can be really annoying to say, like, all these coffee people are showing up. It's like coffee tourism, and it feels really a bit weird to have so many people kind of invading a country in a way. But at the same time, it's part of the process of getting these stories told and getting these farmers connected to markets and exploring quality and just kind of opening that up. And so, again, there's always a little bit of good with the bad, but it's amazing how many roasters travel to origin now. And you can see it in websites and in the marketing and publishing of the way that coffee's talked about. It's so incredible. I'm getting ready to launch a coffee from El Salvador called La Esperanza. And I went in and just, on Google, and every roaster's been on that state. It's like total coffee agro-tourism. I actually remember a funny thing. I went on agro-tourism when I first landed in London. I said, I'm going to go to Italy. And we went driving to Italy. And I said, I want to stay on farms. And I'm aging myself, Josh. But at that point, there was no Airbnb. And there was no, I don't even think there was an email. But there was a book that was published called Italian Coffee Agritourism. It was all in Italian. So I had to translate the book, and I had to call people and learn enough Italian to say, can I stay in your barn?
I want to thank Daryl and Chris for sharing their experiences. Make sure to check out all of Daryl's movies. But my favorite is World's Greatest Dad. This podcast was created and produced by me, Josh Caldwell. Music by Visual Aid, my side music project. General support and copywriting by Miranda Caldwell. If you like the show, please follow, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like to financially support the show, check out my Patreon page. You'll have access to loads of great bonus stories. You can find the link in the show notes. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come back next week.